if you want to eat meat, eating fish produced in an industrial fashion is a pretty good choice. As a protein source, it's pretty good competitor for being sustainable.
Hello, and welcome back to the Sustainable Healthcare Podcast. I am Joachim from Green Innovation Group, and we are still working on making the healthcare sector more sustainable. And today I have a bonus episode with you, with Skage from the previous episodes. He is now working in a water cleaning company who's doing a lot about cleaning water in general across different sectors, and with a special focus on cleaning the water in fish farms and fish dams, and then taking that cleaned out stuff and making it into to fertilizer for farms. So it's a little bonus episode outside of our normal spectrum. Hope you'll enjoy it. Take care. Hello, Skage. Welcome back to the Sustainable Healthcare Podcast.
Thank you, Joachim. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the other episodes. And today we're going to venture a little bit outside of the healthcare industry, and then again not, because there's a lot of food being consumed in the healthcare industry, and there's also a lot of water that needs to be cleaned. Mm-hmm. But first, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Well, my name is Skage, and I'm a geologist. Worked at Smith for many years with mining and cement, and now I'm working in a company called Alumichem, where we produce chemicals for purifying water, mostly wastewater from industrial and fish production, but also drinking water. Where we have actually one plant in Ghana where we produce chemicals for purification of the drinking water of the capital. So it's an interesting industry and much more a very different one from where I came from.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's a super interesting industry, and one that's of course present a lot of places in the healthcare industry. Both that if the water that we drink is not clean properly, we tend to be sick, but also that especially pharmaceutical production, what we call the active pharmaceutical ingredients, that tend to consume a lot of water, and water with quite specific requirements. So that's highly. And fun fact, actually, Novo Nordisk, their factory in Montclair in Brazil, just became, I believe, the world's first factory to be allowed to use rainwater that has been collected in the pharmaceutical production.
That's nice. I also believe that one of the biggest water processing plants is owned by the medical industry. It's in Kalundborg.
I would assume so. It's immense volumes in Kalundborg for sure. They're also with Novo Nordisk as the key actor. In your work, you are fortunate to help a lot of different water cleaning types. If you had to tell us about one of them, which one would that be?
Well, one of them that is fascinating me a little bit because it's new, and it's new to me, of course. It's fish production, where you have. It has a little bit bad reputation, production of salmon, for instance, in Norway and Iceland and these places, Canada, Chile. But it has as a protein source, it's a pretty good competitor for being sustainable. If you want to eat meat, eating fish produced in an industrial fashion is a pretty good choice. Now, what we then CO2 wise,
it's a pretty efficient machinery.
The drawbacks is of course the antibiotics used that is getting into the environment, and also the waste from this production. And what we do, and what the industry is trying to do, is to create systems that recycle the water completely, or at least maybe up to 90%, and so that we can remove sludge and use that for various purposes. And to talk about this process it's kind of simple. We add first one chemical that make, let's say, phosphorus stick together.
So just the reason why it needs to be cleaned at all is that after the fish is done eating, the fish do what humans also do, and poops out some stuff, and
and that stuff can be used for let's say fertilizers or things like that if it's processed in the right way.
Okay.
So one of the projects that we're part of with it's D2 Aqua in Hirtshals it's many years of effort, but it's where you create the right type of filter cake, which has reasonably good NPK ratios. So it's nitrogen, phosphorus, and calcium, I think. And also you have some carbon in there.
That sounds like good stuff for fertilizer.
Good stuff for fertilizer. It has to have the right ratio to be commercially attractive for a farmer. So we manipulate this a little bit, and we add chemicals to collect the phosphorus out of the water and the nitrogen, and then we take we coagulate these particles, and then we add another chemical that makes them form even bigger particles that can settle. And then we have mechanical systems that filters them and sorts them out so you can process it. And I think this kind of efforts could move that industry from being, let's say, having a little bit of bad reputation, which is, if you look at the potential of the industries and the growth rates it's seeing, it's too bad, right? Because we helping that industry and being more sustainable would have a large impact, because it's an industry that is seeing immense growth rates. I mean, in Norway they have. I mean, it's been an adventure beyond belief, right? And I think Iceland is also seeing this now.
Yeah, it's a super interesting and complex production, because it doesn't necessarily make it nicer to be a fish. So in terms of animal ethics, we are on a status quo. But if you look at it from if you are fine with eating fish, then it's a very efficient protein source, and so we also jokingly call it the animal filter. Whereas if you look at something like a pig or a cow, that's a very, very bad animal filter. You have to put in a lot of feedstock, a lot of energy, and then you don't get that much out in the end. I can't recall the exact numbers, but I think it's something like, if I recall correct, 180 calories you have to put into a pig to get 1 calorie out. Oh. It's very, very, very inefficient. And their fish are much better in that sense. In general, just growing things in water are super efficient.
Algae and things like that also has big potentials. And I think many of these food sources will come on, but they will all create some sort of waste that needs to be processed. And as this industry and water is playing a key role in it. So a company like ours, that's looking at how can we purify that and recycle that water into the system so it won't get into the environment.
So what are some of the environmental damages that are being created at the moment from these fish farms?
Well, localized big damage to the local fauna and flora, and of course, and you also have as generators of disease. So I mean, you can have certain type of disease that is in a livestock that is in seawater that goes from let's say fish that is tame or onto the wild, and you get mixtures of let's say there's not closed barriers between the production environment and the nature around it.
No.
And that can have all kinds of consequences.
Yeah, and also you spoke about antibiotics, which is it's actually one of the key health challenges that I think WHO sees, and antibiotics resistance will become one of the key challenges for human health, and not just but definitely also from agriculture and fish production, but also from spills from factories and whatnot, where human beings end up being resistant to antibiotics, and antibiotics are really, really helpful tool in staying healthy. So it's bad if we become resistant.
And some of these, I mean, it has to do with production capacity too. How many animals do you have per production unit and things like that too. So you use it, of course, as a prophylactic to keep diseases low, and then it and of course you get resistant bacteria that then goes from the production environment and into nature.
Yeah.
And that's.
Are you able to clean out antibiotics too?
We haven't looked into that, but it's a good. It's definitely something that should be. Well, we are definitely all these. It hasn't been on the right now. It has been to valorize, create value out of the waste, but definitely I haven't. But we should probably try to measure that, see if there are remnants of antibiotics in the sludge. That could be. That's a good idea.
Thank you. I feel not completely. There's this wonderful clip of Elon Musk where some journalist is asking him if you could not only reuse the rocket but also reuse the boosters, and you can just see Elon Musk thinking about, okay, this is an interesting idea, and then, and they ended up doing it anyway. So, maybe you will end up doing something with antibiotics. So the key thing here is that from a protein point of view, at least, it's a very efficient system to do these fish farms, but they create a lot of waste. And you are able to clean up that waste and make fertilizer from it. And do the fish farm companies, do they then sell this to land farmers or the fertilizer, or what happens?
At the current stage, I think they are just able to give it away. But it will have, when the project is done and we really get this going, the final product will have a value. And that requires then that we are able to produce a waste of a certain quality that has a value to the farmer, of course. So that's one of the challenges.
Refining that product.
And making the exact right chemical ratio. And that means we need to capture a little bit and then add something else to balance it. From our perspective right now, it's more or less what is the right chemicals to use in the various steps, and how do we work with partners to develop this whole chain. So it's a lot smaller kind of problem than in the mining industry or in the cement industry. But if one looks at the future of this industry, it's a problem that will become larger and larger, and having it being more sustainable, I think, will allow salmon production to grow. If it's unsustainable, I think countries like Norway is right now taxing it. I mean, I think they are adding they are arguing over a 60% tax on salmon production from 0 to 60, because it's so profitable, and also to minimize the environmental impact. They don't want to be let's say, aquarium. So there are some huge aspects in this, both financially, and it's a big industry in some countries, and also from the environmental perspective.
Is there any other things you would like to add?
Well, I mean, one of the interesting things being in a smaller company rather than a larger company, for me, I used to work in these large corporates, and now I'm working in a small company that has huge growth plans. And it's how.
What is small?
It's 50 people.
Okay, yeah.
It's all the activities. Some of these, a company like this, it's been around for 40 years, they are actually doing, and I think many smaller companies do this, even if they don't have large sustainability reports and things like that. They do a lot of small stuff that improves the environment. It's like making sure we don't have wastewater, adding solar panels, reusing containers where it's possible. But I hear you also meet regulations, because in most cases when you transport chemicals, it's actually perfectly okay to reuse the whole container. There's no technical problem with it. But there are standards and things like that where for shipping purposes, for instance, it has to the container has to fulfill these and these standards, and it has to be new, or customer requirements as well. So there are some interesting perspectives that has to do with being a small company and not only the industry we're in, where you see that. I was actually positively surprised that it was actually a lot of the actual stuff done to reduce the environmental impact was at the same level as a big corporate, and even higher, but it's not, let's say, promoted in the same way, or used in marketing in the same way. It's just done because it's.
Well, that's the important thing, that it gets done. And I think it's also just that. I think it's so important that we find solutions for all the small companies, and that the green stuff gets commoditized. And I'm saying that as a consultant who more or less only work with the large companies and the large public systems, but the green transition can't really wait around for because I mean, small companies, they can't really use consultants often. So we need software, we need commoditized things where you can, like the way that thankfully now with green energy, I mean, you can just buy it more. You don't have to be very large to buy green energy. You can just buy an electric car, and you can just more or less off the street buy plant-based cantinas or whatever it might be. That's really what we need to have, all these things commoditized so that it's available for everyone.
And there's of course a mindset. Some companies are very, and some people and employees are very far ahead in this how they think, and others are less. Are more old school, stuck in their old ways without really thinking about it. But still, to me, there's been a rather positive surprise that that most of the activities were done with a lot of common sense, and I think mostly because it's good business, but also because
and that's the beautiful thing about the green transition, that so much of it is good business, and that's even before you take in how your employees will feel about it and how your partners, that there's just a lot of savings and a lot of good stuff.
Yes, and what the inhibitors are is, well, sometimes it's like if you talk to your transport companies and you want to discuss CO2 emissions per kilometer and things like that, they don't always have the numbers, and the negotiation can be, it's hard to drive.
You don't have a lot of negotiation power if you're small.
But still, if they're also small, then people try. But you're right. And then you have, I guess, you have what your customers demands also, that if they demand, for instance, new containers for the chemicals, then you'll create a lot of waste that way, plastic waste and things like that is completely unnecessary. So I think there are some systemic barriers that stops these things from happening, but surely it can.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you,
and best of luck with cleaning up the fish poop and making it into something valuable that can even grow new plants.
That's the plan. Thank you.
No, my pleasure. Hi, Joachim here again. Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed the episode. I definitely learned something from Skage. I always do. And if you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe to the podcast. That helps us a lot. And if you listen to it and liked it, please share it with a friend as well. Thank you so much.